Thousands of pages and billions of dollars. Ahead on Face the State, Senate Republicans unveil their spending plan. It includes a huge income tax cut, investments and some changes for funding public schools, and a lot of money for a new stadium for the Cleveland Browns. Hear why they're calling it a pro-growth budget that's good for Ohio's future and why Democrats are pushing back. Plus, tightening security, the steps JewishColumbus is taking to keep their community safe in central Ohio after horrific anti-Semitic attacks in two different American cities. The president of JewishColumbus and their chief security officer join me in studio. Face the State starts now. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. State lawmakers have until June 30th to present a two-year operating budget to Governor DeWine. The House passed its version in April. Senate Republicans unveiled their 5,500-page, $60 billion budget proposal on Tuesday. It includes a $1.1 billion income tax cut, property tax relief, and investments in public education. Their plan is to lower the top state income tax rate and implement a single flat tax rate. That will happen over the next 2 years if approved. Senate President Rob McCauley and Senate Finance Committee Chairman Jerry Serino held a news conference to lay out the proposal. They say tax cuts can help attract businesses to the state and boost the economy. Right now, the top state income tax bracket in Ohio is 3.5%. That would be lowered to 2.75% for the 2026 tax year. Currently, the 3.5% income tax rate applies to those earning more than $100,000 per year. Those earning between $26,051 and $100,000 pay 2.75%, and those earning up to $26,050 pay zero income tax. That will stay the same in the Republican plan.
Something that we entered into knowing that it had to be a pro-growth, positive budget for the state of Ohio to keep building on the success and the wins that we've had in the state of Ohio as far as economic development and economic growth.
Flat tax, actually what ends up happening is that they are disproportionately they pay off the folks at the top of the income brackets, and the folks at the lower end are the losers.
As far as public education goes, Republicans say their plan pumps $634 million more into K-12 schools than the current two-year budget and keeps the basics of the fair school funding plan in place. They also changed a provision passed by the House that would require districts to give property tax money back to homeowners if the district carries over more than 30% of their operating revenue to the next school year. The Senate version would allow school districts to carry over 50% of their operating revenue. Districts could also put funding in a separate account for capital improvement projects. They would have to use that money within 3 years or face a penalty.
We've added more dollars in funding than current law, than the House proposed budget, or the executive proposed budget, $634 million. We're going to let the formula actually work and continue in its final phase. So there are districts that will get less than they did in 25, but no one will get less than what they received in fiscal 21, as the Fair School Funding Plan was designed to do.
Another big topic this General Assembly has been state funding for a new Cleveland Browns stadium in the suburb of Brook Park. The Ohio House is proposing issuing $600 million in state bonds to pay for the project. Governor DeWine proposed increasing the state tax on sports gambling. Now, the Senate has a different idea. Under the Senate plan, the state would provide $600 million from the state's $3.7 billion unclaimed funds program. From that fund, the state would also set aside another $1.1 billion for other sports stadiums and culture facilities. The Browns will commit $1.2 billion for their stadium project, plus put $50 million in an escrow account and provide a $50 million line of credit. Lawmakers say the money would be paid back with tax revenue from the stadium project.
At no point are we risking the ability of the state to make good on any obligations that it might have for folks or organizations that are claiming or have claims for the unclaimed funds. And with the addition coming in every year, we'll be able to support other projects going forward in the state. What this does is it takes idle money and puts it to work to create jobs, to create incremental taxes, and that's why we're so excited about this project.
Democratic State Senator Bill Deora of Columbus issued a statement saying he is disgusted by the Senate version of the operating budget. He says, quote, "This budget is somehow even worse than what we got out of the House. It is a spit in the face of all Ohioans." He points to the funding of the Brown Stadium while making cuts to food banks, libraries, and the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. There will be more hearings on the two-year budget proposal in the Senate before it goes to the full Senate for a vote. Again, the Senate and House must complete their work on the budget by June 30th. Joining me now for a reporter roundtable on the budget, our Columbus Dispatch state government reporter, Haley B. Miller. Thanks for being here, Haley.
Great to be here.
As well as Cleveland.com and Plain Dealer politics reporter Jeremy Pelzer. Jeremy, again, thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot.
First of all, I just want to start off with the big picture, Haley. What's your big takeaway from the Senate budget proposal?
I think for me it is this income tax cut, but within the context of other cuts that the Ohio Senate's looking to make. They would make some broad cuts to Medicaid. As Senator Jerry Serino said, some school districts are not going to get as much money as they did last year. Library funding is being restructured. So I've been thinking a lot about what Governor Mike DeWine has said about more tax cuts in Ohio, which is that, the money has to come from somewhere, and I'll be curious as lawmakers debate things like property tax relief balanced with an income tax cut, how they make those numbers line up.
The governor has been very consistent about saying that too. It's just like, well, if you take it away from somewhere, it's got to come from somewhere else. Jeremy, what's your big takeaway?
Well, first of all, give the caveat that this is not the end of the line for the budget. We still have another round of revisions by the Senate to the budget, and then we have conference committee where they go behind closed doors and House and Senate negotiate a final deal. But with that said, the Senate's plan is it's a culmination of conservative priorities over the past 10, 15 years since Republicans have gotten majorities and supermajorities in the legislature. It's another step toward getting rid of the income tax altogether, which is something that an increasing amount of Republicans have wanted for years. And now the front runner for the Republican nomination for governor, Vivek Ramaswamy, he's called for that. And
for phasing it out.
For phasing it out, and that's exactly what this is starting to do. It's starting to phase it out. And at the same time, too, it also shows that the House and the Senate, I think going into this session, a lot of people expected Senate President Ron McCauley and other Republican senators to sort of be at the beck and call and be under the thumb, if not, of House Speaker Matt Huffman, who was a previous Senate president. This shows that they are most certainly not, and that they have some independence and definitely their own ideas about how the state should be funded.
Yeah, and Haley, public school funding, it can get a little dense when we look at it.
A little bit.
What is the fair school funding plan and whatnot? Well, the House wants to throw out the fair school funding plan. The Senate says it's going to keep it basically intact. But then there's this discussion about the carryover money, 30% for the House. And if the school districts carry anything more over than that, it's got to go back to the property owners in form of tax relief. The Senate wants to bump that up to 50%. I mean, there's so much going on here. School districts, I would think, are still a little bit, like to see the 50% more than the 30%. But what are you hearing in terms of the way this funding debate is going with the schools?
Yeah, well, first going back to the Senate plan, they do phase in the funding formula, but school districts are pretty critical of it still because it only guarantees them the same amount of money that they had in 2021, which a lot of districts say does not account for inflation, rising costs, for all the things you need to pay to keep a school district running. So they see that ultimately as a cut. And then I think also with this carryover funding, I think districts just want to see that entire conversation go away, frankly, because they feel like they're being penalized for being fiscally responsible, for responding to, tea leaves from the pandemic and other difficult economic times that said, we need to have more money in the bank in case things go south.
Plus, they have that money, then a lot of them say that money is for capital improvement projects that they have planned out years ahead. So if they had to give it back, then they'd have to ask for another levy. So it's a double-edged sword.
Right, and that's, another piece of this too, especially within the debate about property taxes is, school districts recognize that it's getting harder and harder to go back to the voters and ask for more money, and they feel like this carryover balance discussion undermines that.
Jeremy, you have done a lot of reporting on the Cleveland Browns stadium issue. We've seen different plans now, 3 different ideas coming out from the governor wanting to raise taxes on gambling, the House wanting to issue state bonds worth $600 million, and now the Senate has this totally new, different idea to take the money from the unclaimed funds pot, basically, that's $3.7 billion. What are you hearing in terms of the popularity of this idea, if you've talked to anybody on the Browns or what's going on?
Well, it's interesting. In the legislature, there's been no serious discussion, at least among the Republican supermajority, about not giving the money at all. The only debate has been about how to give the money. And as you said, there's been several plans put forward. This is the latest, and this one has been called a very creative solution, I believe. Speaker Matt Huffman put it. And I think if you ask the Senate Republicans, they would say that it kind of combines the governor's plan, but tweaks it in a way that you don't raise taxes, you don't have bonds where you have to pay about $400 million in interest over the life of the bonds. And this is the budget equivalent of looking under the couch cushion and seeing what's out and trying to buy something with it. And so the only pushback that people have given is some making sure that people who file for unclaimed funds to get their money can still get it, that they don't run out of money. But other than that, no one's seriously criticized this.
And they did say that there's that 10-year window, at least, for people to make sure that they can get the unclaimed money as long as they know that they have unclaimed money and they apply for it.
And of course, that the part of the plan is that the funds, that the $600 million that would go to the Browns, would be repaid by tax revenue generated. So it's not like the money would just be gone. There are questions and differing opinions about whether that tax revenue would be enough to fully repay it. But it wouldn't be like they just gave the money and so long. I mean, there'd be another $1.1 billion taken out of the fund for other stadium projects. Such
could be
as
the Bengals.
The Bengals are asking for $350 million. Nationwide Arena and other stadiums might be coming up soon. So there's a lot of money to go around.
Yeah, and Haley, you've also written about the Medicaid cuts that you mentioned at the top here. What can we expect if this plan were to go through, and what would happen to Medicaid funding and those on the Medicaid expansion population?
So right now, the budget would, or at least what the Senate proposed, it would cut Medicaid funding by 1% across the board in 26 and then 1.5% in 2027. Senate Republicans say that this isn't aimed at particular programs. They see it more as doing kind of what the federal government says they're trying to do, which is streamline things, get rid of some of the waste or unnecessary bureaucracies in the program. And there's also language in there that has been in there since DeWine proposed his budget, which is that if the federal match for the expansion population drops below 90%, then they would lose coverage. I think there are estimates out that would affect about 700,000 Ohioans. Now, it's anyone's guess what the federal government is going to do with Medicaid, but Senate President Rob McCauley said if that is the reality coming down from the federal government, that the state just can't afford to pay it.
And he said it's the Pac-Man of the budget, basically, that keeps eating larger and larger chunks of it. Jeremy, what does all this mean? The Senate plan does have a lot of big differences than the House version and the governor's version as far as negotiations going. We've got about 30 seconds left.
It's going to all culminate in this conference committee that's going to be meeting later this month. They're going to have about a week to work out a final deal, and there's going to be some give and take. There's major differences between the House and the Senate. The governor, of course, has a say because he can veto anything that the legislature sends him using a line item veto. So we will see what ends up happening. I think on some of these big ticket issues, you're going to see some sort of compromise. And there's a lot of stuff built in as negotiating positions, too. So we'll see what happens.
All right, Jeremy. Haley, thank you so much. I know I'll be seeing both of you a lot at the State House in the next 3 weeks. So thank you both for being here today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Well, all right, next on Face the State, pulling together in the face of hate. After 2 anti-Semitic attacks across the country in the last 2 weeks, the Jewish community in Columbus is putting precautions in place to keep people safe. Hear from community leaders about their concerns next. In an email to the Jewish community this week, JewishColumbus leaders said the community across the country has faced unimaginable terror in recent days. So they are tightening security and warning people to be careful. In the email, they point to what authorities call the targeted killings of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C., then the makeshift flamethrower and Molotov cocktail attack in Boulder, Colorado that injured at least 15 people last Sunday. Investigators say it happened during a peaceful gathering of people showing support for Israeli hostages in Gaza. In response, JewishColumbus leaders say their security team is working with local, state, and federal law enforcement to address the community's security needs here. They have spoken to the police chiefs of each city that houses a Jewish institution in Central Ohio and connected with local clergy and other agencies to coordinate on security. They also shared 3 tips for staying safe. Increase your situational awareness and observe your surroundings. Call police if you see something suspicious, and run and hide if you see someone threatening harm, and if needed, fight to save lives. Joining me now are JewishColumbus President, CEO Julie Tilson Stanley, and JewishColumbus's Chief Security Officer, Mike Higgins. Thank you both for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. Julie, I want to start with you. How have the most recent anti-Semitic attacks in D.C. and Boulder, Colorado impacted the Jewish community here in Central Ohio?
Thanks, Doug. The uptick in anti-Semitic incidences has caused fear and anxiety, and simultaneously, as a community, we are undeterred. And what we are doing and what we're putting in place is helping the community, not just the Jewish community, but the entire Central Ohio community, providing them with different action items that they can do to remain safe. At JewishColumbus, we believe in a safe and vibrant community, and really a safe JewishColumbus community is a safe Columbus community.
Do you feel safe right now, or do you have specific reason to be beefing up some of these precautions?
We are beefing up because there is uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, we want to make sure that we have everything in place. And that is why my colleague, Mike Higgins, Chief Security Officer at JewishColumbus, is here, and why we partner with our law enforcement, our elected officials, and our clergy to make sure that everyone is on the same page and we are able to collaborate with the entire community.
Mike, let me turn to you on that. What are you focusing on right now as Chief Security Officer?
Well, Doug, first and foremost, we are ensuring that we have an armed security presence at all of our locations. We've partnered with local police special duty officers, and when they're not available, we've been hiring and contracting with armed security services. We've followed up with a deep look into our security technologies. We are currently test bedding some remarkable state-of-the-art security systems. They have a lot of capability, and we're looking to deploy those within the next couple months.
What facilities are you focusing on?
All facilities are considered important. We are probably starting off with those who have the least amount of capability right now. We have some that are very well thought out and built out currently. But we are going to probably start out with those that have what we would deem kind of the lower level of stuff, and bringing them up to par with what we consider state of the art.
And you're talking about schools, synagogues, other Jewish community centers,
Correct.
That kind of thing?
Correct. We have 20 locations, 20 physical institutions that fall within, JewishColumbus's, overview. And again, like I said, we've been out, we've looked at all of them, we've done security assessments. Where there were some shortfallings, we've addressed those already, and we are moving. We are at a good baseline right now. We are in the process of raising that bar to, like I said, a state-of-the-art security system, including technology, operation centers, and armed security.
And arms presence. Julie, what are you hearing from the community in terms of, we've seen different attacks and horrible incidents over the years, but now it's just in these last 2-3 weeks, what are you hearing from the community?
We are hearing a lot of unease and questions and hesitation around going to events, whether that's an event at any of our institutions or even around town if they're wearing a Jewish star or some piece of Judaica on them. People are scared, and anti-Semitism has the the anti-Semitic incidences in Central Ohio has increased by 42% since October 7th of 2023.
42%.
42% in Central Ohio. And the Jewish population in the world only makes up 2% of the population. And so it is alarming and concerning, and we know that we always not only have to take our own steps to ensure our safety, but we want to do this in partnership with the entire community.
Mm-hmm. What kind of incidents are you talking about?
Good question. I will let Mike talk a little bit more about those, but it can be graffiti. It can be assault. We've had that. We've had a few incidences on and around campuses in town. We have folks who have reported that their students at different high schools have felt unsafe and been called more than just anti-Semitic slurs, but actual threats on their families.
How do you respond to that, Mike, as a security officer?
When these reports of anti-Semitic behavior or actions or incidents come in, first and foremost, we will coordinate with local law enforcement and whatever authority might have purview over where the incident happened, let's say at a school. We've had multiple incidents of anti-Semitism in schools. We involve, like I said, local law enforcement, and then we'll coordinate with our public relations people and speak with school administrators and teachers, try to figure the best way to mitigate and address the issue, and take action that's deemed necessary.
In the minute we have left, Julie, what advice do you have for those in the Jewish community and those who support the Jewish community or just in general in the community going forward?
Stay aware of your surroundings. It sounds simple, but that applies no matter where you are. Whether you're out at a festival, at the grocery store, at the movies. Unfortunately, those are the times we live in. And even more so for the Jewish community, we are hyper aware. And we are incredibly grateful for our partners. I can't tell you how much it means and what it means to the Jewish community when we have these partnerships outside of the community that we work really hard to do. Our clergy work with superintendents across the city, and we've heard from many of them this past couple of weeks to say, what can we do? And the support means a lot, and making sure that all of us understand where we are and how we can advocate and stomp out hate.
Hopefully this helps get some of that message out as well. Julie, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you as well. Appreciate it. Best wishes to you both. Well, next on Face the State, they say they won't be silenced. We're talking about the LGBTQ plus community. Democrats, LGBTQ plus advocates and supporters stood in solidarity for the marginalized at the beginning of Pride Month. The bills lawmakers are rolling out that they say will protect the rights and dignity of the LGBTQ plus community. June is Pride Month. Democratic state lawmakers and supporters are pushing back against what they call anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. They also unveiled their own Pride Month legislative package. They say their package of bills protects LGBTQ plus people, defends their rights, and affirms their dignity. The package includes bills banning conversion therapy, protecting marriage equality, and ensuring basic civil rights.
Members of the LGBTQ community survived persecution, survived erasure a long time ago. We are not going back to those days.
This is about recognizing the lived realities of thousands of Ohioans who deserve to see their rights protected and respected.
As of right now, Democrats say they have no Republican co-sponsors on the legislation, so passing the bills will be a challenge because Republicans hold the majority in both the House and Senate. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you back here next Sunday at 11:30 for another Face the State.